I basically saved up a bunch of money over the next 12 months. And then I put in my notice and I quit, got rid of a bunch of stuff, stuffed the rest in my backpack, and went to South America for 3 months and backpacked around. So when I was down there, I just realized that everybody that I run into is way happier than any American that I ran into in Chicago. And they had no physical assets. They didn't have any money. They had a roof over their head, most of them. They had 1 or 2 pair of shoes, and they had enough to get by. But they didn't have the 70-inch flat screen TV. They didn't have the direct TV. They didn't have the fancy cars. They didn't have all these things that Americans clamor for, but they were so happy. And that's when I really realized that there's so much more to this world than just making good money in a job that you hate.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Rich Your Soul. Today's guest is Paul Maskill, who left the corporate world to forge his own entrepreneurial path. He teaches us how to do less, make more, and be happy. Stay tuned. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Rich Your Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Rich Your Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richyoursoul.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a monthly email where I share the best articles I read this month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and share a little wisdom. You can also listen to coaching calls under the Coaching Calls tab. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week on Facebook at facebook.com/Rich Your Soul. And there's also a Facebook group where you can ask questions and interact with other listeners. Today's quote comes from Henry Ford. When everything seems to be going against you, remember, the airplane takes off against the wind, not with it. Can you stop a wave? Probably not. Can you ride a wave? Absolutely. And some waves are better to ride than others. But at the end, all waves come to an end. When it comes to money and investing, and even business, it pays to ride the wave. Just be careful when you do, because there is always the inevitable crash. When markets are going up, it's easy to have success, and sometimes we become a bit overconfident. The economy and the stock market go up and down. It's impossible to predict when things will change, but having an exit plan and being aware of changing environments helps to keep you riding the wave safely and also having a wonderful landing on the beach. When everyone else believes something is true and it's the best way to do it, it may be time to consider alternatives. The current thinking is investing in the stock market through passive stock funds is the best choice. Back in the 80s, it was investing in CDs that paid 18%. For a while in the 90s, it was internet stocks. What's going to be next? That's what I'm watching for. If you've got some ideas, I'd love to hear from you. Speaking of investing and ups and downs, you'll hear from Paul that he started working in 2007 in the financial world. You can imagine what happened next. Paul is part of my mastermind group, and he started his first business in 2011. And like most entrepreneurs, he began working 60 to 80 hours a week with a business that couldn't survive without him. So Paul started systematizing everything while empowering a team to run the business better than he could. Before he knew it, his revenue doubled to almost $500,000, while the number of hours he worked dropped to below 40. Paul then sold his business for 3x net profit. He's now back into business ownership with 3 local businesses, while also coaching overwhelmed business owners who are hungry to uncover the income and freedom they always knew was possible. Let's meet our guest. Welcome to Richer Soul, Paul Maskill. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you so much, Rocky. Really looking forward to the conversation.
As am I. I'm excited to have this conversation and dig a little bit deeper into the topics. So we always start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
It's a funny question. I preach about this every day, that the school system and the educational system doesn't teach anybody about money, if you think about it. We get these jobs and we start bringing money into our account, and we don't know anything to do with them because no one's ever taught us anything, at least from a direct educational system process that the government likes to put in front of us. Luckily, I got a finance degree, but even rewinding all the way back, I'm sure everybody heard the statement, money doesn't grow on trees. My parents were the same way. I grew up in Michigan, very blue collar living. My parents are probably the only people that didn't work in the automotive industry. All my friends' parents, every single one of them worked for either GM, Ford, or Chrysler. Mainly GM. I grew up just outside of Flint, Michigan. So everybody worked for GM, and they had their pensions. They didn't have to save anything. They had their good job. They got their 2 weeks off during the 4th of July. And you didn't really talk about money, except for my family. My dad, blue collar still today. He's owned his own hardwood floor business his entire life. My mom started working once I went into kindergarten. She started as a clerk/grocery bagger at the local grocery store. My dad worked hard. Every dollar he made, he worked for it. And my mom worked her way all the way up from bagging groceries all the way to eventually going to college, probably when she was 30s or 40s, was a bank teller, worked all the way up to being a regional manager of a bank. And she just recently retired. But as far as the money goes, I started working when I was 14. I loved working. I think I liked the money aspect of it. I liked when I put in the work, I got a return, and then I could do something with that money, which also led to my, if you would call it a passion. I really liked math in school. I loved numbers. I loved finance. But nobody really told me what to do with this money other than work hard, get a good job, do that for 40 some years, and then retire. Eventually, my mom taught me a little bit of it. Was probably in high school or college at this point, of what a Roth IRA is. Hey, start putting some money away for that so it grows tax-free, that kind of thing. But as far as the power of compound interest and all these things, nobody ever teaches you about it. And it is really kind of sad because we get all this education, we get all this knowledge, but does it really matter if you remembered what happened in 1784 in Pennsylvania, if you don't know how to navigate the real world? So that's where I really got frustrated and kind of took it into my own hands. Yes, I got a finance degree, but even then it was still very vague of what you should do from a personal finance standpoint. I remember friends that I graduated college with, they didn't get a finance degree. And then they went out on their own. They didn't even know what a checkbook was or how it works or where the money came from or how does a credit card work? Literally, I only have to pay $25 a month and I can buy all this stuff. So growing up, it was different because, like I said, it was all blue collar. So it was kind of learning. Plus, I always liked to save. I liked the concept of saving. I collected baseball cards and basketball cards growing up. I was enamored with, if I hold on to this long enough, it might be worth something. Probably no different than a lot of the listeners out there of, we never really learned about it other than it doesn't grow on trees and you need to work hard and you need to get a good job.
And that's very similar to, I think, a lot of people's story. And it's surprising because I have my MBA as well, and they do not teach you what to do with money in these economics degrees and these MBA programs and so forth. It's just not taught. And it's really a shame because we spend our whole life going to school to learn how to get a job, to spend our whole life working, and no one tells us how to handle the rewards of that, which is the money. It's changing, though. I think now that you have more information available for those who want to find it, it becomes much easier to find it. And the conversations are happening a lot more often. And so the information is at least freely available and easier to find than it used to be in the past.
Yeah, I mean, that is so true. I mean, with the power of podcasting and the internet and Google and people having mobile apps and all these other things, I was listening to, I think it was Chris Hogan from the Dave Ramsey crew. He surveyed tens of thousands of millionaires, and over 30% of these everyday millionaires were school teachers. Literally, they just weren't making a ton of money teaching every day, but they were saving this money. They were working their side hustle. They were working in the summer. And that just shows you the power of having that personal finance knowledge. You don't have to make a ton of money to have a lot at the end of the day. It's just a matter of putting that money in a place. Otherwise, it's going to find a place of its own.
And that's very true. And I think the biggest key ingredient in that is time. And I think people don't realize how much time affects the amount that you have left at the end. Because if you wait 7 to 10 years to begin the process, you're essentially losing the last double of your money on the compound curve. So if you were going to end up with $1 million, if you had the extra 7 years and started a little bit earlier, that million becomes 2 million. And so you are giving up a tremendous amount by waiting. And if you wait till you're 40 to start saving, which a lot of people do, you've given up 2.5 doubles. So the million goes to now 4 million or 5 million that you've given up for waiting. And that's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And I think just kind of, I would say one final thing for all the listeners out there. I saw a post on Instagram a couple of days ago that said, if you bought $6 worth of Starbucks stock every day instead of buying a $6 Starbucks, just showing you the power of compound interest and the power of the market. If you would have done that since like 1999, you'd already have like $500,000 or something crazy like that, just because of just that little bit. But having the systems and processes in place to regularly save, regularly invest into something, whether it's your own business, whether it's the market, whether it's real estate, just setting aside that little bit of money every day compounds. Like you said, every 7 years, it's basically going to double.
And the key to that is systems. And we'll dig more into systems as we get into the conversation. Out of curiosity, you have kids. Are you doing something different to teach your kids about money?
Yeah, so she's only 3, but she already understands the concept of money, and she has a piggy bank. So like literally any money she gets, any coins that we get, we just put it in the piggy bank. And, you know, right now it's just kind of showing her that, hey, we save some of this stuff. We don't just go spend it all. Because I think a lot of times parents fall into the trap of whatever their kid wants, they get, or the grandparents treat them that way. So then it's like, come on, mom and dad, you know, grandma and grandpa always do that. Why can't you do that? You know, but I'm really intrigued by once they get a little bit older, just teaching them the power of entrepreneurship, whether it's going to buy a case of water for $3 at Costco and selling it for $1 each and making, you know, $40 off that $3, or going garage selling, or going thrifting. Just to teach them the principles that, hey, you know, it's really about having that mindset and putting the work in. And then once you start saving this money, seeing how it can compound, you know, over time. Hey, if you put $100 in now, at some point you'll have 200, and that's twice the amount of money you have. So, you know, that's where we're at right now. Just kind of showing that you don't just spend money, you can also save it.
And that's cool that even at 3, you're thinking about it. You've already got the ideas of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And I think too often people don't think about it until it's way too late. I look at my kids' friends who are all now teenagers and off about to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on college. And a lot of them have just not grown up with any money skills. So it's good that you're thinking and you're doing it forward. And that's kind of the key to life. So you went to college, you got great grades, you got your finance degree, and I'm assuming you went into corporate. What happened?
It's kind of funny. Now I'm working kind of in blue collar industries, but growing up, my dad and everybody else said, you got to go to college. You don't want to be doing blue collar work. You don't want to be doing manual labor. So I listened to them. So, you know, I got good grades, went to college, got good grades. I was the type of person that I hated reading. So literally, I didn't open a textbook the 4 years that I was in college. I just could not comprehend if I just read a bunch of pages and try and figure it out. But I didn't skip a class in college. Literally, I didn't skip a class in college. So it's because I just, you know, there's plenty of people that could skip every class and then read the book and be really well. I had to watch the professor do it, and I had to do it myself instead of just trying to read it. So I always hated reading. But anyway, I graduated, got good grades. And moved to Chicago to climb the corporate ladder. So I moved to Chicago, worked in the finance world. Everybody said, oh, man, that's the greatest thing ever. You can do that for 40, 45 years, retire, get the corner office, climb the ladder, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I set out to do. So I moved to Chicago in 2007. So just before the financial meltdown that nobody saw coming, even though obviously in retrospect, there's plenty of red flags. So I went there. I was literally probably the last person hired on my floor, because probably 6 months into my tenure there, everybody started getting laid off. So I realized pretty quickly, I was very naive at first because I was just following what everybody else told me to do. And I remember I could get the work that they gave me, once I figured it out after a couple months, I could literally get it done by lunchtime. So stupid me went to my manager and said, hey, like, is there more work? I'm done and it's only lunchtime every day. Is there more work I can do? So they basically gave me another person's job without paying me another person's salary. So I realized real quickly that this wasn't like anything else that I did. Usually the harder you work, the more money you make, and you can better yourself. But I was just one cog in a giant wheel. And if anybody's watched the movie Office Space, that movie is 100% accurate on everything that happens. Most people are in corporate doing just enough to not get fired. Anyway, I realized this wasn't for me. And really the trigger points were I'd watched these people that worked for this company forever, just starting getting laid off one after another. Like they were so loyal to this company. Everybody tells you, have loyalty, stay with one company. They'll treat you well, blah, blah, blah. But the minute the downturn happened, they were just chopped liver like, hey, thanks for your work, but you got to go because you're making more than everyone else. And that's when I realized like having a job is probably the most insecure thing possible. It's basically owning your own business with one client. And if that client fires you, you're cooked. So I knew I didn't want to do that for very long. It just wasn't gratifying doing the same thing every day. Nobody really appreciates it, especially during that time. So I would say it's a blessing in disguise that I started my corporate career during the worst point in, the last 60 or 70 years in the financial world. So that just showed me that I could always go back and get a cube job, but I really needed to do what I wanted to do. And that was kind of being in control of my destiny instead of somebody else sitting in a corner office. So 3 years in, probably 2 years in, I was planning my exit. I basically saved up a bunch of money over the next 12 months. And then I put in my notice and I quit, got rid of a bunch of stuff, stuffed the rest in my backpack, and went to South America for 3 months and backpacked around. So when I was down there, I just realized that everybody that I run into is way happier than any American that I ran into in Chicago. And they had no physical assets. They didn't have any money. They had a roof over their head, most of them. They had one or two pair of shoes, and they had enough to get by. But they didn't have the 70-inch flat screen TV. They didn't have the direct TV. They didn't have the fancy cars. They didn't have all these things that Americans clamor for, but they were so happy. And that's when I really realized that there's so much more to this world than just making good money in a job that you hate, and you'd rather do something you love every day. So when I came back and relocated to Raleigh. So that was another thing. Chicago is just dark, gray, cold, and snowy and windy for like 8 months out of the year. Great place to be in the summer. So I relocated to Raleigh, much better weather. People are happier. And that's when I decided to start my own business. So I realized that the worst case scenario was I crash and burn. I learned a few things along the way, and I can always go back to a cube job and make enough money to get by. So that's kind of the beginning and end of my corporate career. If you wanted to dig into what happened after that, or if you have any questions on what I did and why I did it.
I do. The first question is how did you get your work done in half a day?
I just realized that corporate world is so inefficient. I mean, I was working for a bank that probably had, 100,000 employees across the world. And there's no way you can actually manage that, and people, I think I was just really efficient at it, and I like systems and processes. But at the end of the day, I realized that, like I said in offices, most people are doing just enough to not get fired. And if you look at the 9 to 5 kind of blows my mind in retrospect. So you get in at 9, but you really don't start working until 9:30 because you're talking at the water cooler, you're putting your lunch in the fridge. If you're packing your lunch, most people don't. They spend $15 a day on lunch. Then you go talk to a couple people in the cube. So you probably start working around 9:45. And then lunch is right around the corner. So, you might work for an hour and a half, but the phone rings or someone comes by, or, you go downstairs and get something to eat, whatever it is. And then lunch is an hour. So really, there's just not a lot of productivity in the corporate world, and I was able to use, maybe what I had learned just from a technology standpoint too, how to use Excel and get things done quicker, how to write macros and get things done quicker. Really, I was so confused of why does this take other people so long? So Stupid Me was the one that raised my hand and said, hey, I can do a lot more work. When really I should have just done what everyone else did and then be done at noon, where they just kind of figure out, how can I make a full day's worth of work out of this? So I wouldn't say there's any secret sauce, but just being resourceful and using technology to my advantage, especially things like Excel. And work was my number one priority. I had been working since I was 14. So I was when I was at work, I was working. I wasn't here to socialize. But what I realized pretty quickly in the corporate world is there's just a lot of downtime, a lot of wasted time.
And that's very true. And A lot of people do exactly as you say. They waste it and they don't focus on building their skills or making themselves better. And unfortunately, in the corporate world, they are not going to say, hey, do 2 jobs, we'll pay you twice as much or even 50% more. They're pretty much going to say, okay, do 2 jobs and you get the same paycheck, which isn't a good outcome on your side of the game.
100%. And even just looking at it politically and legally, it's really hard to fire somebody in the corporate world. So people know that. And, they're building their case silently on the back end. If someone ever was to fire them, they can pull this card or that card. So, it's really hard to fire somebody. And most people know that. And they'll do just enough so that way people stay off their back and they get the job done. They meet expectations. They meet their quota, whatever it is. But other than that, there really isn't a lot of hunger. It's more or less you're just there. But the people that are really hungry, usually what I found was they didn't really stick around. They were continually moving on. Whereas the other people, it's just like, hey, I'll camp out here for another 10 or 15 years and we'll see what happens.
It's not a happy life. So you left there. What was the first business that you started?
So we ran after school golf and tennis programs for elementary kids. So I had always loved sports. I worked at the golf course. I played golf my whole life. So I just really loved that aspect of it. Giving kids an opportunity to play sports that really weren't as accessible as other sports like soccer, basketball, baseball, football, all the other things kids can do. Golf and tennis have always been seen as country club sports, not accessible. So this business model was really, hey, we'll bring everything. We'll bring all the equipment. We'll do it right on your school campus. You don't need to go to the country club. The goal was to introduce the sport to them and then also give them the tools and kind of the learning lessons and life skills that these sports teach you, how to be honest, how to have integrity, how to build relationships, all these other things that, sports in general inherently have, but especially golf and tennis because they're individual sports. More or less, they are self-governed sports because there's not always a referee or an umpire there. So teaching them all that and then transitioning them to parent-child events, leagues, camps, all that kind of stuff. So when I got into it, it was really looking at what what I saw in South America and seeing how happy people were with little or nothing, I literally just said, if I made $30,000 a year, I would be so happy doing this because there is so much more to life than money. How much more of an impact you can make. There's plenty of people making a lot of money and having no impact. And I'd rather make less money and have an impact and feel good about myself and be excited to go to work every day per se. So that's what I did. And it was awesome. I ended up making way more than $30,000 a year, but really that was my goal, is just make an impact. And when your bottom line is dictated by the more kids you impact, the more money you make, it's a lot more gratifying than doing spreadsheets and making money for shareholders and trying to beat corporate earnings and quarterly calls and all that other stuff that goes along with most corporations, especially if they're publicly traded.
And that's very true. One of the concepts that you talk about is make more, work less, which kind of seems like an oxymoron. How do you make more and work less?
Yeah, in layman's terms, easiest way to digest it is you build a team. I took kind of what I saw in corporate America, like if they can put these people in these positions, so can any small business. If anything, small business can do it a lot easier, quicker, faster, better, because there isn't all this red tape and 17 managers to run anything by. So I learned it the hard way. Like I said, I never read a book in college. I hated reading. So I started this business. Things were going great. And then the demand was just like, once we kind of took off, the demand was nonstop. And I realized that I became the bottleneck and my business could no longer grow because I was in the way. Like I was using every single hour that I could possibly do. I loved it. Working 80 hours in my own business was way better than 40 hours in a cube. But still, like my business, I was in the way. Like I couldn't physically or mentally work anymore. So our growth was going to stop if, I didn't start delegating to a team. And I realized that if I got hit by a bus or I got sick, this business would go to zero pretty quickly because I was the one kind of spearheading everything. I had coaches out there running the programs. I had delegated that fairly quickly. But as far as business operations and sales and marketing and all the other things that happen on the back end of a business that most people don't see, I was the only one doing that. What I realized, and just using quick numbers here, we were doing probably around $250,000 in revenue. I was doing everything on the back end and we were clearing about 30%. So I was making $75,000 of profit, but I was working 80 hours a week. And if something happened to me, it would go to zero really quickly. So I empowered, basically 4 of our coaches that were already out there coaching every day, gave them a full-time position. We doubled our business. We went up to about $500,000. Obviously, we're now making less profit because I'm paying these people full-time, but our profit was, 20%-ish. So 20% of $500,000 and not working at all, I was profiting about $100,000. Not working at all. I mean, I was still there being the leader, being the business owner, but I wasn't an integral part to the day-to-day success of the business because I had these 4 people kind of running the day-to-day from an office standpoint. So I was able to work a lot less. I was able to make more. And then if you figure out what I was making per hour, it was like 5 times as much. Obviously, you have to make that leap in order to do that. Otherwise, if you just stop working less and you don't put other people in place, you're not going to make more. Your business isn't going to be worth anything because nobody wants to buy that business if it requires you to be there every day.
And that's very true. You need to remove yourself from the process and empower other people to do the work. And I noticed that you knew your profit numbers off the top of your head. You knew your numbers. How important is it for you to keep track of the numbers? And what do you normally see with small business owners and their ability to do that?
Yeah, so their ability to do that is terrible. Kind of going back to our very first part of this conversation, because we never learned about numbers. Most small business owners that I work with or run into or have conversations with, they have money in the bank, so they're in business. Where obviously I was able to take my financial background and really analyze everything and let the numbers take the emotion out of it and let the numbers dictate the decisions. Because we are so emotionally tied to our business that's the thing that we use to make every decision if we don't have the numbers. And unfortunately, most small business owners, most entrepreneurs aren't good at that, which is okay. You don't need to be good at it if you can hire someone else to be good at it. Now, you need to be competent and you need to know where your numbers should be because you as the leader need to know that. But you don't have to be the best at it. If you're the best at making widgets, then teach other people how to make widgets. But you at least need to know your numbers. Me personally, I still go into QuickBooks every single day, reconcile, see where the numbers are, see where it is compared to our budget. See where the percentages are. How does our gross profit look? All the things that you need to know and be competent so you can at least help make these decisions. Otherwise, most small business owners just say, well, there's money in the bank and we're still in business, but I could never afford to pay anybody else to do this because that would go to zero really quickly. So when you have the numbers and the ability to kind of map these things out and slowly delegate these things, so as your business is ramping up, yes, your investment in your employees is also ramping up, but eventually you're going to hit that tipping point where, wow, now I'm making more. I have the peace of mind. I can sleep at night. I'm not working 80 hours a week. And I have the infrastructure to really grow my business as big as I want because the opportunities out there are endless. It's an abundant world. And if you just do a few things right, you will have demand forever. So that's really what I see. It's really hard for small business owners to make that leap because they are going to have to make less. So like I said, when our business was doing $250,000 and we were profiting 30%, I wasn't taking all that out of the business. I was literally paying myself, $36,000 a year. The most I ever paid myself out of that business was $40,000 a year, just so we had the ability and we had the mobility to, if somebody wanted to come onto the team, we had the ability to say, hey, I want to hire you. Even though I don't need you this second, I'm going to need you in 2 months. So I'm going to invest in you now, get you ramped up because we have the ability to pay you because I'm not taking all that money out. Whereas most business owners, they're not set up, they're not structured that way. And their personal lifestyle is probably a little bit too expensive anyway.
And that's very true. Everyone always tends to overspend in their personal life instead of keeping things in control. And I guess this is always the concern because I hear this from a lot of small business owners is they don't want to remove money from their business. And it sounds like you did the same thing. You were keeping your income down, but here you are working 80 hours a week. And if you do the math, you weren't really making that much money. Now, granted, you were enjoying your life, but how do we get out of this? Because it's just a different rat race, right? Than the corporate rat race. It's the small business rat race where we're working more and more, but we're not really making more. So how did that change where you were able to pull more money out of the business?
Yeah. So, I know you like to talk about profit first. And if that book would have been out then and I would have read it, it would probably been a little bit different. But I also wanted to have the ability to, like I said, invest in these people. And it was really having the patience and knowing the numbers. So I knew my numbers. I knew that money was still in the business. It wasn't just magically disappearing. Whereas profit first can help that money make sure it doesn't disappear. luckily for me, especially coming through the recession and watching all these people lose everything, including, my father, I was like, we're not spending any money on this. I know I can keep 30 grand in the bank and it's not going to disappear. Whereas a lot of business owners can't do that. They don't have the, self-control because it slowly dwindles. Okay, now we have 28, now we have 26, now we have 20 because they're buying things that they might not need. Whereas Profit First takes that profit first and then it tells you this is your operating expense fund and you need to operate out of this. So I really like the concept of Profit First, to do that. But I also, like I said, I also had a plan and I had the patience. So the key is to have that plan, have that end goal in mind. And mine was once I got it to that certain point, then I could start pulling a little bit more money out to achieve my personal goals as well. Ironically, once I got to that point, I sold the business. So I was able to cash in just in a different way. And I was able to sell it for a really nice return after just 4 years of running it. But had I kept running it, then I would have been like, okay, equipment. And I know I'm not going to have any huge expenses coming up. So yeah, I can start paying myself more than 40 grand a year. So I can invest in my Roth IRA a little bit more, or I can put a down payment on a house or whatever it might be.
We'll be back with Paul in a moment. Do you struggle with your numbers? Do the terms balance sheet and income statement scare you? Do you feel anxiety when you look at the books? I can help. I work with small business owners to focus on the numbers and remove all the fear and anxiety. I work with the Profit First system that's designed to help small business owners focus on the numbers in a simple and understandable way. My consulting costs a lot less than you think it does, and the return is having the money to live the life of your dreams. Schedule a quick call to see how we can work together. It's Rocky@richersoul.com. Now, let's get back to our amazing conversation with Paul. Why did you choose to sell the small business?
It's a good question. So it wasn't totally planned. I basically met with one of my friends who's a small business broker here in Raleigh. And I really just wanted to get a good feel of where my business was valued at. And they did the valuations. They ran the numbers. They, did all their things, look at the comps. And they said, hey, this window of this range, this multiple is kind of what your business would be worth depending on when you put it on the market and who's available, I said, well, that's great. If we can sell it for the very top end, I'll sell it. Otherwise, I'll just keep growing it and sell it for more later. And it was kind of a timing thing. Within a week, somebody had called them and said, hey, I'm just seeing what kind of business you should have available. I just retired early from the corporate world. I love to play golf. I want to, own something around something that I love, and I love to play golf. So it was really one of those things where it was perfect timing because even he said a business your size wasn't huge. Like I said, we're doing, almost $500,000 in revenue. So not huge when you're dealing with business brokers who deal with much larger businesses than that. He said it'll probably take about 9 months to sell. And ironically, it took a week. So it wasn't totally planned like, hey, I need to sell this. This thing's a dumpster fire. It was more or less, if I can get a good return on my investment, I'll do it. Otherwise, I'll just keep growing it. That's kind of what happened in a roundabout way.
So what did you do next?
Obviously, I sold it much quicker than I expected. I had a lot of people asking me, how do you do this? How can you help me do this? So I was going to go into the consulting world and help other people kind of systematize, automate their business, grow it, put the systems, processes, people in place. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. So I started a bunch of different things. I started an e-commerce store. My wife and I started an e-commerce store selling some handmade wood products. We started an Amazon FBA business where we were importing goods from India and selling them on Amazon. Started a podcast. We bought a house. So I spent a lot of time fixing up the house and getting it, the way we wanted it. And then I kind of settled into the coaching and consulting niche at that time of helping other business owners do the same thing that I was able to do. So I probably did. I'm still actively doing that. But now I'm really back into the business ownership world, running a few local businesses myself. So this has been over the course of about 3 years. So obviously compressing 3 years into like 30 seconds. So now I love working with service-based business owners. People provide a service in their local community. So I own a dog walking business, a pet sitting business, and then I'm a partner in a landscaping business here locally. And then I'm also a partner in a steam cleaning, power washing business. So I really just love those businesses where you can build a team, you can make an impact, you're serving your local community. And there is so much opportunity in those worlds. Like I said, I referenced it earlier, if you do a couple things right, and literally, if you answer your phone, you do what you say you're going to do, and you follow up and make sure you're doing a good job, like the opportunities are endless in this world of entrepreneurship, local businesses.
What are some of the biggest struggles that you see small business owners face?
I would say from a big picture thing, it's cash flow. That's one of the biggest things that small businesses, most small businesses don't make it to their 5th birthday. And it's usually because cash flow is not coming in, or if it is coming in, it's not going out, or, bigger picture, that's where it is. I would say businesses that are sustained that have issues is the owner is still just too much of an important cog in that business, whether they're still providing the service or they're the one running everything on the back end. Making that transition, I had somebody on my podcast, and the stat that he provided was like 97% of small businesses will never have more than 3 employees. So really getting out of that owner, operator, do-it-all mode into business owner, CEO, leader role, that's probably the biggest problem. Because when we start our business, we want more freedom, not less. We want to make more, not less. And we want to have that freedom lifestyle of kind of being able to do what I want, where I want, when I want. Unfortunately, we start a business, we're self-employed, but really we just own a job. We're self-employed by ourselves. We own a job. If we stop working, the money stops coming in. And that's no different than a job. So I see that's really the biggest issue. But having the financial knowledge and having the systems and processes in place in order to make that transition out of the business is where everybody gets stuck. They don't have time for that in their mind. They don't have the money for that in their mind. So they really just kind of become stuck. I mean, my father was the same way. He was kind of owner operator. He's 62 now and he's retiring, but he built a very strong business, but it was all on him. So he did hardwood floors. He was the best in his area. He was booked out for 6 months at a time, but he never put systems and processes in place, didn't trust hiring anybody, was better off doing it himself. But when it's all said and done, we want to be able to have some fruits of all that labor, i.e. a business we can sell, a business we can pass on to our family, a business we can transition to a key employee. So that way we took the risk to be a business owner. We really need to reap the rewards because a lot of times business owners, they don't have the retirement in place. They don't have the pension in place like they would with a job. In order to get that, you need to have a business that's worth something, and it's only worth something if it can operate without you.
And I think that's an important distinction. Too many people don't understand the difference, I think, between entrepreneurship and owning a business because they are two separate things. And in one case, it's you being the business. And when that's the case, then, as you said, when you're not there, money stops coming in. Whereas an entrepreneur, he doesn't need to be there to make the money. The money is being made because he created the systems and allows them to run. And I think that's an important and a big distinction. I think the area that people struggle with, it's what you kind of, talked about, is that you have to put the time in to create the systems and you have to be willing to let go. Because if you're not willing to let go, then that's a problem. And the reality is, though, that no one is going to probably do the work as good as you will a lot of times. And it depends on the situation. There are areas where people are much better experts. But you need to also just change your expectations and how you're looking at people. It's letting go, which is kind of difficult. I have a listener question today from Caleb. And for those of you who would like to ask questions, join the Richer Soul Facebook group. And that's where I post all of the upcoming people who are going to be on the show, and you get a chance to ask a question. So Caleb's question is, I'm curious where Paul goes first to look for 2 new team members, and what skills or qualities is he looking for?
Yeah, Caleb, I mean, that's a great question, especially in this labor market. Unemployment's at, historic lows. It's hard to find good help. That's another excuse everyone says. I'm not saying Caleb's making this excuse, but a lot of people, I just can't find good help. I'm better off doing it myself. I love systems and processes. So the one thing that I use in all of our businesses, all 3 businesses that I'm, running here locally, is a program called Jazz HR, JAZZHR, just the two letters HR.com. It's an applicant tracking system. And basically what it does is you create your job postings and it blasts them out to all the free job boards on a regular basis. So the LinkedIn, the Glassdoor, the Indeed, Facebook, all these other places for free. Jazz HR, there is a cost. It's $49 a month for the lowest package. Totally worth it. It saves you so much time. And then every day, you can set it up however, but I get an email every morning. You have 7 new applicants for this job. So that's what I use. What's really great about it is it has a lot of email automation in it, and you can do a lot of different things and track your applicants. But what I recommend everybody do is constantly have your job posting out there, so that way when your ideal candidate applies, then you can move them forward. And you might be thinking, well, that's kind of a jerk move, even if you're not hiring, that you're posting these jobs. But it has this email functionality in it too. You can say, hey, thank you so much for applying. And then you could send them another email saying, hey, everything looks great. Right now, we're not, we don't have any openings, but we probably will soon. So you can really keep them warm and engaged and not just like they applied and then they never hear from you again. So you can really start to build this relationship. And I equate it to fishing. So if you go fishing, if you're just that, I need to hire someone tomorrow, it's basically like throwing your pole into the ocean and whatever bites, that's what you hire. Even if you didn't need a shark, you got a shark. Even if you didn't, need a flounder, you got a flounder because that's what you needed and you just needed the next fish that bit. Versus building a pond and then stocking it with your own fish. Then when you need a fish, you can go in and grab it because you've already kind of, put them through these processes and making sure that they are your ideal candidate. So the key is obviously continue to feed them and continue to show that you are a legit person, that's somebody that you'd want to work with. So that's what I would do there from an automation standpoint. It's awesome. It's great. It's amazing. It saves people so many headaches, because where I see most business owners get stuck is they don't hire until it's like a 5-alarm fire and I need somebody tomorrow, and then they hire the next warm body and that person sucks because you tried to fit a square peg in a round hole. So that's the first part of the question, Caleb. Hope that helps. The second part is, what do I look for? If you have the right systems and processes in place, you need to hire for personality and train for the job. And what I mean by that is hire somebody that has exactly what you're looking for. They have that it factor. They have that drive. They showed up early. They dress well. You could have a beer with them. Like, it's somebody that you want on your team, because with the right systems and processes in place, you can teach them whatever they need to do to be successful. So I'll give you a perfect example for this. So literally just 2 weeks ago, we hired somebody for our landscaping business. Great candidate, checked all the boxes, but he had never really done landscaping before. But he had everything else. And we know we can teach him how to do the landscaping because we have the systems and processes in place. And we have the team members that we've really started to build around that are willing to teach this guy how to do what he needs to do. And we know that he cares enough and he loves his job and he's really excited to be here and he loves the people. He's going to do it just as well as anybody else because there is that accountability factor. So what I equate it to as well is Chick-fil-A. So I'm in the South. Chick-fil-A, is kind of the gold standard for not just restaurants, but how to run a business and how to systematize and, automate everything. Chick-fil-A does twice as much revenue per fast food store than anybody else. They're not open 24 hours. They're not even open on Sundays. And they literally just basically sell chicken. And the reason they can do that is they have phenomenal systems and processes. So when then they hire people, they don't hire the best chicken fryer or the best French fry cutter or the best, keyboard person on the register. They hire the best fit for their team because they know they can teach them how to cook the chicken. They know they can teach them how to key in the orders. They know how to, they know they can teach them however what they need to do because they have the systems and processes in place and it's down to a T. So that's really what I recommend. Hire for personality, train for the job. Obviously, there needs to be like a baseline competency level and a few boxes that they need to check, whether it's, hey, you need a driver's license, or hey, you need to be at least 18, or hey, you need to be able to lift 50 pounds or whatever. But other than that, if you can do it, so can somebody else, as long as they have the right personality. So hopefully that helps, Caleb. But that's really what I do. And like I said, I run a dog walking, pet sitting business, a power wash and steam cleaning business, a landscaping business. So those are businesses where people always complain it's hard to find good help. It's not easy to, it's very simple, might not be easy, but when you have the systems like a Jazz HR in place to constantly bring in new candidates, eventually you will find the perfect fit. And then you can then train them everything that they need to know when you set those expectations.
How do you measure personality through, I guess, an electronic resume? Like you're getting all these emails, so you're getting paper, but how do you tell from paper, hey, this person's got the personality that I'm looking for?
Yeah, that's a good question. On our back end, we have kind of a lot of check boxes that they need to check. So one, what is the did they take the time to put together a real resume? Or is it just pulling from their LinkedIn profile, or is it just pulling from their Facebook or whatever? So, okay, they took the time to do that. And then in the application, we have a lot of questions, and some of the questions aren't required. So the reason we do this is see how bad they really want this job. Because a lot of people, if it's not required, they're not going to do it. But we have one question that says, in 150 words or less, why are you awesome? If they don't fill it out or they write one sentence, they're probably out, because we want people that want to go above and beyond the requirements. So we have a couple questions like that aren't required. And it's kind of counterintuitive because a lot of people say, I want everything required, but I want a couple of those questions that, well, are you willing to do more than what's required to get this job? I.e., did you put together a real resume? Did you answer the questions that aren't required? And then we have a question at the bottom, why do you want to work with us? And if you say, because I need a job or because I need to make money, that's not the right fit for us, because that is so self-serving that, if that's the only reason you're doing this job, once you get a better offer for 50 cents an hour more, you're going to jump ship because you need to make more money. So a lot of it's not black and white, but that's kind of the first step. And then the next step is, okay, they look pretty good. We send them a questionnaire, and the questionnaire is, several other questions, also some repeat questions from the application to see if they answer it similarly, to make sure that they are consistent. But what we say in that email is answer this within 2 days. So we send it to them. We could send them today on Friday. We're recording this on Friday. Answer this in 2 days. If they don't answer it in 2 days, they're automatically out. Rejected by you. You didn't follow directions. You're not good at it, or you're not eager enough for this job and you'll get to it when you get to it. Well, we don't want those type of people. So then you weed those people out. So now whoever filled out that form within the 2 days and filled it out like we like, then we might send them an email of, hey, let's schedule a phone interview. Let us know within the next 2 days what are some good times. If they don't reply within 2 days, they're out. So, it's all about how hungry are you? How much do you want to work with us? How well are you at following directions? How well are you going above and beyond and doing more than just that? So at this point, we've weeded so many people out that once we get to the interview, and the interview is a whole nother thing. We've had people not go through all those steps and then they didn't show up to the interview on time. So you're out then too, because if you can't show up to the interview on time, why would I think you're going to show up to the job on time? The last person we hired, we did the interview at 5:45 in the morning and he was there early. Like that shows to me, like you're hungry, you're ready to go get it. And I can teach you whatever you need to be taught because you're willing to show up at our office at 5:30 in the morning. That's pretty impressive. So, and obviously he checked all those other boxes as well. So really having a systematic process that you follow for everyone, and even if you're not in the mode of hiring right now, you could get everybody to filling out that questionnaire form. And once they fill that out properly, and you could just send them an email like, hey, thank you so much. We just filled our last position, or we're going to be hiring in the next month. Sit tight. I'll reach back out to you to schedule a phone interview. It just makes your life a lot easier when you kind of have, and everybody's different. You might have different things that you're looking for, but that's kind of what we look for in order to not spend a lot of time on HR. But then when we do, the people that we get are phenomenal.
And that concept of creating those small hurdles to see what people will do works in a variety of different ways, in a variety of different business functions. And it consistently amazes me of how few people will jump over, because these are teeny hurdles, right? Just fill this back to me in 2 days. It's not that difficult. And yet, as you said, you weed out so many people. And it always amazes me that that is the case. So I guess that, because the second kind of step to this whole thing is, if we go back to where we started this conversation, which is you're working in corporate America, most people just don't want to do the work. How do you deal with that within your organizations and your companies? Do the people who you end up hiring then, because you've gone through all these steps, want to do the work? Are they motivated to constantly show up, and that you're picking different people? Or do you sometimes struggle with that same concept of people come in and they just want to do the minimum?
That usually works itself out. So I'm a big proponent of you really build the culture, and the people that want to be there love it. And the people that don't want to be there kind of weed themselves out. So, you also put in parameters in place, obviously with their employee agreement of, hey, this is what we expect. If not, subject to termination or however you want to put it. But eventually you build this really strong team of the people that want to be there. They're 100% bought in. They got each other's backs. They're accountable. They're capable. And the people that don't fit in usually work themselves out. Very rarely do we have to fire somebody. Usually, just like that whole application process, people weed themselves out. Like, we didn't weed you out. You just didn't follow directions. Once you become an employee, it's kind of the same thing. And I think it also, to add to it, you really want to build that culture of taking the time to figure out what everyone's goals are, So if I hire Rocky, what's your goal? Well, I really want to have this, balance where I can take a couple weeks off and spend it with my family or do whatever. Okay, great. How can we help you achieve that? In turn, once we reach our goals, you're going to reach your goals as well. So really, when everybody's bought in, if you think about, I always like to equate it to sports teams. Sports teams really want to win a championship. But do they really? Because there's plenty of teams with a bunch of stars and they kind of suck because they don't work together as a team to get that championship. So when your actions really don't map to your goals, that's usually, when things happen. Whereas then you look at, in football, the New England Patriots are obviously, they're the gold standard. They bring all these people in that nobody's ever heard of, but they're all hungry. They're all willing to take a little bit less. They're all willing to do what's best for the team instead of what's best for them. And when you do what's best for the team, everybody wins, So that's really what we found. Very rarely do we have to get rid of somebody just because they're not doing enough work. Usually they work themselves out. They don't like the culture. They go find another job. And then the people that really want to be there are like 100% bought in. They love it. And it makes for a really strong culture.
And I think that's very important. And I'm seeing much more today. Businesses are focused on culture and creating the right culture. And those businesses that have great culture do have a very high bar and a very high screening in order to get hired and to get into those systems. And so people who are looking for jobs need to also look at themselves and say, who am I? What do I want? Do I just want to show up and do minimum? Then go find a company that's looking for that. If you want to go do great things and be surrounded by people that are doing great things, then you've got to step up your game as well. And you now know, this is what the other side of the table is looking for when they hire people. And so you have to make the decision. Is this what you want? And are you willing to step up and do what it takes?
Yeah, 100%. Over time, kind of the word gets out of like, this is a great place to work. And then people that work there tell their friends like, hey, you should really come here. They really take care of us. They appreciate us. They recognize us, which is the other part of the culture of understanding that you can't achieve your goals without those people and they can't achieve their goals without you. So really, no one's above anybody. We're all in this together. I'm not the boss and you're the worker. It's really building that cohesive. We all need to be on the same page in order to get to where we want to go. And when we get there, everyone reaches their goals, and it just makes it a lot more fun instead of just constant turnover of people. And then the owner's like, where are all these people going? When really it's the common denominator is the owner.
It is. The answer to your questions are all the reflection in the mirror. You are the obstacle that prevents the success that you want to have. We've talked about how you've systematized the HR and the hiring process. What other areas have you put systems in place to make the business operate without you?
Yeah, really everything. And I think a lot of people kind of get caught up thinking, well, if I put robot can't do this job. And it doesn't mean a robot has to do it or a piece of technology doesn't have to do it. It just means it has to be done in a systematic way. Even when you say my business is automated, it just means things happen automatically. It could be a human doing it. It could be a piece of software. It could be a piece of technology. It could be a robot, whatever it is. So really anything that you do in your business more than once should be systematized. So whether it's how you follow up with customers, who do you call on Monday morning? How do you set the schedule? So understanding that if you do it the way you want it done, and it's done in a systematic way, if you give that blueprint to somebody else, they're going to do it that way because they don't know any other way to do it. They're going to say, Rocky always did it this way, so I'm going to follow Rocky's lead. And then the next step is you empower that person to say, this is how I've always done it. This is the end result we need. But if you can find out a better, more efficient, quicker, cheaper way, I'm all for it. So not only do they take ownership of this process, but then they're empowered to really take ownership in the sense that they can always make it better as well. And I've had that happen many times where I give a process to somebody. This is how I've always done it. Here's the training. And then they say, hey, Paul, did you realize that this thing over here could actually make it go quicker, faster, better, cheaper? And I say, that's great. Let's do it. Thank you so much. And then they really feel like they are a part of something bigger and they're not just someone pulling levers and pushing buttons.
Do you reward them for that? How do you say thank you?
It's funny you mentioned that. Really, you just say thank you, and then you recognize them in front of the team. And you might, take them out to lunch or throw them a gift card. Hey, take your wife out to dinner. But everybody thinks if I pay my people more, give them raises, that's all I have to do. And yeah, raises are nice, and yeah, people have to make ends meet. But when you can recognize that person in front of their peers and say thank you, and then give them a small token of appreciation of, hey, take your wife out to dinner. Hey, here's tickets to the game tomorrow. I know you really like basketball. Whatever it is, those things go so much further than, hey, here's an extra $1 an hour. Now, don't get me wrong. We pay our people very well. We pay them better than probably anybody else in their specific industries because we want to attract the top talent, but we also want to keep them. And, by showing recognition and appreciation and saying thank you and, hey, guys, you did great. We're recording this on July 5th. It's a work day, but hey, guys, take off July 5th. Give your employees a long weekend, whatever it is. Just doing the little things and really having the empathy. I think a lot of business owners get stuck with the mindset of, well, they're getting paid to do their job. They need to do their job. Yes, they do. But you as the owner also need to have empathy to understand what they're going through. And, if it's a job that you used to do, how much work it takes or how much certain things suck or whatever it is. And just having that empathy to know what they're going through on a day-to-day basis goes so far, because a lot of business owners, once they get that office, it's I versus them instead of we're in this together. And it's, then that's really when the disconnect starts, instead of understanding, hey, it's 100 degrees out. I know you guys have been working hard all week. Go home, spend time with your families, come back on Monday, recharged, whatever it is. There are so many ways to do it that doesn't cost a lot of money. And people just want to feel appreciated, recognized, and know that they are a part of something and they're making a difference.
And I think that goes a long way, is the appreciation part. And I've noticed that with some small business owners, they have the I versus them mentality of, well, if I'm giving somebody money to do work, they're taking it out of my pocket. And I think that's the wrong way to look at things. I look at my workers as they're all helping me to make more money. So I'm really supportive of them. And unfortunately, some business owners look at it in the opposite of that they're a cost, and the people aren't a cost to your business. If you've set it up right, they are there to help you grow and to help you achieve your goals. So I'm a systems person, you're a systems person. For us, this is just natural to do. For someone who isn't a systems person, how do you create the blueprint? What's the first step?
One, you could hire somebody else to do it for you. Hire someone that likes operation systems and processes. But if you can't do that, literally the way I did it, I recommend everyone else do it. I was a systems person, but I didn't know it. I liked engineering. I liked numbers. I liked spreadsheets, but I didn't know it at the time. I didn't even read any books. Like, in hindsight, somebody should have said, hey, read the E-Myth, and that'll at least give you the blueprint. But really what I did was I took out a big piece of paper and wrote down every single thing that I did in my business. And I wrote it all down. And then I asked my coworkers, what do I do on a daily basis? And they came up with things that I'd even remember because I can do them in my sleep. And then I asked my wife, what else do I do in this business? So I created this big sheet over the weekend. And then I just kind of started organizing it and kind of putting together roles and really building my future org chart. What does this business look like when I'm not in it on a day-to-day basis? Do you have an operations manager? Do you have regional managers? Do you have a territory director? Do you have a salesperson? Do you have a marketing department? Whatever it is, every business structure is different, but start building this kind of ideal org chart. And then all these tasks, you start kind of putting them, this is what this person would do. This is what this person would do. This is what this person would do. With, in your back of the mind, making sure that this would make the customer's life better. So, making sure the customer only has to talk to one person and not 4 people. They have their point of contact, whatever it is. So now you got that organized. Then literally the first step is just start documenting how those tasks are done. So you have all these tasks, hundreds of tasks. You're not going to do it overnight, but where a lot of business owners get stuck is they tell me, I don't have time to document how to do all this stuff. And my response is technology is great. So if it's anything on a computer, use screen recording software like Zoom or Loom. They're both free. And hit record, do the task, And when I hit record, I mean it's recording your screen. So it's showing exactly what you're doing on your screen. You have a microphone. You can get a cheap microphone if you don't have one. You're doing a voiceover. Okay, account manager, this is what we do every Friday morning. We go in here, we pull this report, we do this, we modify this. You're literally talking over what you do. Once you're done with that task, you hit stop record, and now you've successfully documented your first ever process. Didn't take you any more time, maybe 30, literally maybe 30 seconds because you had to take the time to talk and do the process a little bit slower. But then you take that recording and you give it to whoever else is going to do it. Whoever's going to do it. Rocky, here's how you do it. This is your new task. Watch the video. Let me know if you have any questions. Starting next Friday, this is all on you, buddy. And that's what you do. If it's not a computer task, we all have these fancy things called phones that do way more than make phone calls. If it's an in-person task, you literally hit record and record how it's done. And you've just documented an in-person process as well. So it doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be functional. You can always make it prettier later, but you can never make it prettier unless you get started. So get started. Otherwise, you'll just be sitting there saying, I need to do this, but you never actually do it.
And that's very true. I think it's always the key concept is get started, take action. I mean, it's the answer to everything. I guess the question for a lot of business owners is, I think it's the fear of letting go or of thinking it's trust, I guess, is what it is, right? How do you kind of overcome that to let go of tasks and let go of things and let somebody else do it?
Yeah, it even goes back to the earlier conversation of hiring the right people, having that culture, but understanding that 99% of people in this world, probably more than that, but at least 99% of the people in this world are inherently good people. They're not going to do things wrong on purpose. They're going to do things wrong because they didn't have some sort of direction. They didn't have the right training. They didn't have the right infrastructure. They didn't have the right leadership. You weren't accessible, whatever it is. Otherwise, this world wouldn't be here if most people were going to do things wrong on purpose. So understand that. And then also understand that we are not saving lives. We are not police officers. We're not first responders. We're not fire department. This is not life or death. So if they don't do something the way you wanted them to do it, one, it'd be really hard to do that if you have a video and you're talking over. But say they didn't do something totally perfect. If you have the right culture, you just reach out to them like, hey, Rocky, you did a really good job on that. Just next time, I would probably look to do X, Y, and Z. It'll probably make your life a little bit easier. So you don't make it like, hey, I'm scolding you. It's just like, hey, this would make your life a lot easier. And this would make the customer's life a lot easier. So it's really just comes down to understanding they're not going to do something wrong on purpose. If you create the right system, they don't know any other way to do it. So if you just say, Rocky, this is how it's done, and you have the video and you have the step-by-step, they're going to follow your directions. And then they might do it better. So understanding that, and if somebody does screw up and it affects the customer relationship, you just pick up the phone and call them like, hey, really sorry, Joe was, first day on the job, didn't do it up to your expectations, but we got you, we're correcting it right now. Now the customer loves you even more because you care, and now they probably have more access to Joe than trying to get a hold of you, the business owner who's busy all day and they can never get a hold of you. So now they have their dedicated person, if it's something to do with customers. So, and if it doesn't work, the only way it's a failure is if you quit. Otherwise, you learn from it and then you get better the next time. But if you never get started, you can never improve.
That comes back to the thing. Take action, get moving. And so I think if people want to decide what is something that I want to take off my plate immediately, just think about what are the things that you hate doing, that you dread, that you put off. Those are the first things you should systematize and get off your plate, because then you're a little bit happier. And so you're kind of killing two birds with one stone. You're getting stuff done. Is there anything else that you wanted to share on the topic of systemization within business or running a small business but didn't get a chance to?
Not really. I would say where a lot of people get stuck is they don't really know where they're going. Going back to why did you start this business? And usually it is because I want more time with my family, or I want more time to play golf, or I want my weekends back, or I don't want a terrible boss. All those whys, make sure your actions on a day-to-day basis are mapping that. And you will never achieve those goals if you don't delegate pretty much everything in your business. Yes, it's going to be stressful. Yes, there's going to be days that suck. But when you get there, it's going to taste so good. And your family or friends or whoever you're doing this for as well is going to be so happy. Then you can really take it to the next level and really achieve that why. Whether it's you want to spend more time at church, or you want to, give back more, you want to go on more mission trips, or you just want to travel more, whatever it is, the only way to achieve that with the peace of mind and being more or less stress-free is by putting those systems and processes in place and then empowering people to do it. Otherwise, why are you doing what you're doing anyway? There really is no reason. And along the way, you build a business that's worth a lot because it doesn't need you there. So having that kind of top of mind of why you're doing these things and why you started your business, that usually helps make those emotional decisions a lot easier, because it's like, okay, I can delegate these things because it's going to get me 30 minutes closer to not having to work on Friday anymore, or whatever it might be.
Absolutely. And it's what we talk about. Know your purpose, whether you're the employee, the business owner, wherever you are, clear on what you're doing and why you're doing it and how it helps your bigger picture. Based on our conversation, what's one action step people can take this week to move forward?
I think the key is just get started. Like I said, mapping out your why. And then if you do want to start delegating stuff, just literally take an hour or two and write down everything or type up everything that you do. And what you said, I call it a delegation snowball. So similar to Dave Ramsey's debt snowball, but a delegation snowball of what do I want to delegate tomorrow? Whether it's because somebody could do it for a lot cheaper, if you could hire somebody for $15 an hour to do it, or you just hate doing it, just start out small, delegate one thing. And I think where a lot of people get hung up is you don't have to hire somebody full time to do these things. Whether you have somebody on staff that might be looking to pick up an extra hour a day, or you get a virtual assistant, or you just hire somebody part-time and you're just upfront with them like, hey, this might start out as an hour a day. You can work from home, but eventually it might turn into something full-time. There are plenty of people out there. Stay-at-home parents are great. They might want to work a couple hours during the day while their kids are at school. You pay them $15 an hour to free up your time, which is worth a lot more than that. But the key is to just get started. So write down everything that you do. Pick the first few things that you want to delegate. Once you delegate it and it gets done successfully, you'll probably be kind of addicted to it and you'll start delegating on a regular basis. You'll start documenting so that way you can get back to that why that we just talked about.
And that's a great action step. And there are a lot of services now online where you can actually delegate small tasks. And there's plenty of them that you can Google and find and use. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
I would say just exactly what we just talked about, really mapping out your why. So why am I doing what I'm doing? I want to make an impact. When I die, I don't want anybody to be at my funeral. It doesn't really matter how much you make. Yes, money is great, allows you just to do nice things, but they never write about that in your obituary of, hey, Paul had like $7 million in the bank when he died. They never talk about that. It's about the people he impacted, the people that show up. So I think that's really the key. And then mapping out how you spend your day. So time blocking, if your family is really important, where do they fit in my schedule? And time blocking every single thing so that when 4 o'clock hits, it's time to spend time with the family. When they go to bed, maybe I'll work another hour. But if you don't map it out, your work will just take over everything. And then the reason you're doing everything will disappear because you were too caught up in your work.
And that's true. If you look at a person's credit card statement and their calendar, you can tell everything about their life and their priorities.
That is so true.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say follow your passion. Don't just listen to everybody else. So I listened to everybody else for however long, and it wasn't just my parents, it was everybody. Then go to school, get a good job. You don't want to work manual labor. You need to climb the corporate ladder. And I would tell anybody, no matter what age, figure out what you really want to do. There's a way to make money doing it. You just have to be able to take that risk in order to get there. And I think the key to that is, like we just said, evaluating your time. We all have 168 hours in the week. How you spend that will dictate where you actually end up going. And if you still work a full-time job, but you really want to go do your own thing, well, even if you're committed to your full-time job for 60 hours a week and you sleep for another 60, that still leaves 48 hours of free time to help get you where you want to go. Unfortunately, most Americans watch about 40 hours of TV a week, and they spend another 20 on social media.
There's plenty of time. You just have to use it wisely. And if you're working in one of those companies where everyone's hanging out, not doing a lot, then you have plenty of time to figure out these types of things and start working on them. What is one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Another good question. I don't have anything I would change with my childhood just because I think it made me who I am today and got me to where I am. But I would say don't always listen to somebody else. Make the decisions for you. because at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to have to live with them. And if anybody follows Gary Vee, whether you like him or not, his biggest thing is you don't want to have any regrets. And you don't want to say, for me, I probably should have played more sports. So like I was really focused on golf. I played golf all my life, played golf in college for a few weeks. That's a different story for a different day. But I stopped playing baseball and basketball because I really wanted to focus on golf. And I would say in hindsight, I would probably do all those because at the end of the day, I wasn't going to be a touring pro. I was just really focused on golf. So really don't have those regrets that, man, I wish I could have done that, because you could do it. You just have to be the one to go make it happen.
And that's very true. And I think that's the thing people need to realize is be careful what you focus on, because if you just focus on one thing, when you look back, you may realize, hey, I should have done more. And that's just being intentional up front. If people would like to find you and connect, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, they can just go to my website, paulmaskill.com, PaulMaskill.com. That's probably the easiest way. If you want to go to a website, if you want to connect with me on social, just look for me on Facebook. That's where I spend most of my time when I am on social, would be Facebook. Look me up. There's only a couple in this world, my dad being one of them. So you're probably either going to connect with him or connect with me. I'm the one that's a little bit younger than he is. So that'd be the easiest. I love having conversations. I love just talking business and small business with people. So don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions.
And you also have a podcast. So if small business owners want to learn more about running their business better, they can check out the podcast. And what's the name of the podcast?
Yeah, so it's called The Business Owner's Freedom Formula. At time of this recording, we're over 300 episodes in. Twice a week podcast at the moment. I interview smart people, and then I also do some solo shows, kind of just giving an insight into the businesses that we're running here on a day-to-day basis. So any small business owner that wants that freedom that we all thought we were going to have when we started our business, check it out. Business Owner's Freedom Formula. You just search for it in iTunes or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. You'll find it there.
And I encourage you to check it out and learn. It's another resource and it's free. So it's just time. And we've got plenty of it to learn when we want to. Thank you so much for joining us today, Paul.
Thank you, Rocky. Really enjoyed it.
Wow, so many great nuggets from Paul. I'm a real big fan of systems. And I also love to have other people do my work. This week's action step was to see what one thing you could get off your plate and let someone else do it. Doesn't matter if you're a business owner or an employee, you can still delegate. Maybe it's something in your personal life that you don't want to do at home. Paul shares a lot of great suggestions that can be implemented from the perspective of employer or employee. Or maybe you're someone who wants to start a side business. The goal is to be more free. You can learn more about Paul at his site, paulmaskill.com, and I'll put the link in the show notes. If you're still listening, you must have liked this episode. So please share it with a few friends. It can start a great conversation, and I'd appreciate it. You can also connect with me on Facebook, either the Facebook page or the Facebook group for Richer Soul. What's preventing you from moving forward, and who are you putting on your team to help build the life you deserve? Taking no action creates a far worse outcome in life than trying something and failing. Can I help you achieve your goals through coaching and accountability? Just email me, and we can start with a short chat to see if we're a good fit for coaching. For many people, one session allows them to take a giant leap forward towards their dreams. You can get me at rocky@richersoul.com. I'd love to hear how you're doing and how the information I've shared has helped. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.